Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus here with a look at the Redux Masterpiece Edition of Optimus Prime, MP-10. Many thanks to HLJ for helping me roll out with this review. We'll begin by taking a look at the MP-10 robot, which will probably be the focus of a North American release of this piece, if it does happen. This is, at least in my opinion, the best representation of the 1984 Optimus Prime vehicle mode committed to plastic since the original. The shapes of the cab do not fall into the trappings of a chest on wheels or a misshapen box, as so many other remake G1-inspired Primes have in past. Generally solid and bearing rubber tires, the truck mode rolls delightfully well. I also really like the sculpted detail beneath the rear section. There is a problem in that it's hard to get both the chrome tanks and the trailer hitch area to lock together at the same time, but it's incredibly minor and also solved by plugging that trailer into place. Colors are spot on, and chrome happens in the right spots, though I wish lights had been picked out in yellow to make them pop a little bit more. There are some scrapable spots due to the transformation, so let's have a look at that. MP-10 has an awesomely complex transformation that is also really easy to execute. The multi-layered way the legs come together begins the demonstration of how this toy takes the original 1984 scheme and simply adds to it, much like the original Masterpiece Convoy. There are a lot of similarities to MP-01, though MP-10 feels like it has cleaned up a lot of the process, cementing the gaps and wobbly spots. It makes sense given the time that passed between the two designs. There are also lots of neat little touches like the side rear-view mirrors, the sliding smokestacks, or the wheel well flaps near his elbows. I do feel the hands deploy in a much more boring way than on MP-01, but I'm sure it helps in some way with cleaning up the vehicle mode. Despite its intricacies, the transformation becomes intuitive fast. I really like it. This is clearly Convoy, the bot known as Optimus Prime. Definitely, his proportions feel a little bit more anime-esque. His head is a bit smaller, his limbs are a bit longer, and his feet are a bit pointier. I am cool with this myself, but it's certainly a point of contention for some people's tastes. One helpful point is that you can recompress his biceps, fully or a little bit, if you want his arms to be a tad shorter. Generally, I'm enjoying the sculpt, which is bolstered by a very solid paint job. I really have no problems with that part, though the transparent pieces on his waist do feel a little bit odd. I also wish his eyes were not so dim. I kinda like to have Optimus Prime with his blazing blue optics, and that's not really an option here. Bringing light to his darkened optics is the requisite matrix chamber that we all tend to expect on an Optimus Prime toy nowadays. I would have preferred not having the bumper as a top layer, especially since it tends to take the actual sculpted cover piece with it when you fold it up. The matrix itself is a bit small, but looks fantastic. Made of die-cast and colored excellently, the central jewel is an awesome light-piping engine of blue. It kind of makes me long for the light-up feature of MP-01's matrix chamber, which is sadly not present here. Storing happily inside Convoy's spinal column, his rifle unfolds at the touch of a button. It's really cool to watch, but a little bit rickety to set up. Things don't always click together perfectly. However, it does solidly attach to its user's palm. Despite looking a tad small, it's a well-done firearm accessory. Similarly solid to attach to Prime is his energy axe. It's a single piece of rubbery plastic that slides over his right fist in exactly one way. The axe is okay, but a little bit uninspiring and sadly forgettable in the big picture of this piece. Alright, let's see how posable this man is, this man of red and boxes. And his head is actually on a really interesting setup that would work if it were just a bit tighter. The main problem with it is that while his neck swivels at the base and then has a hinge for some of this kind of boppin', noddin', boppin', boppin', I don't know if you can tell, but on mine it's pretty loose and a little bit jiggly. On the bright side, you can mess with this a little bit more by rotating the transformation joint to give him a bit more of a base starting point if his head does start to sag, but be aware of that. Maybe it's just on mine, I'm not sure. Going into the arms, these things are pretty cool in some ways with one big disappointment. Like MP-01, there's a little bit of pushing in and out to offer some more outward shoulder movement. There's a bicep swivel, thankfully, and the fingers are strange. These three fingers move on their own as just one chunk. The thumb doesn't move at all. The index finger moves on the same chunk, but moves out a little bit farther, and then has another joint there, specifically so he can point at stuff. Like, hey, you, stop looking at my hands. It's weird, because this way he can kind of hold his gun a little bit. He can do the weirdly classic Optimus Prime points epically at things habit that he has in official artwork and photo shoots. But it's odd how specific that joint is, and I kind of wish there was at least another joint on the knuckle of these three fingers, but whatever. The lack of a thumb joint, I thought it would be a bummer, but it really isn't. The bummer is that this elbow only bends this far, and honestly, when you get to the tier of expensive Masterpiece Transformers, I kind of want double-jointed elbows. Maybe I'm asking for a bit too much, but that did bother me. His waist, though, has a nice free open swivel. His hips, man, check this out. Oh! There's a lot of ratchet click stop points, and they're all very solid. This hip is wonderful. The outward motion isn't ratcheting, but it's really tight. There is a thigh swivel that has a little bit of clearance problem stuff going on back here. But it's overall pretty nice, and if you want the foot to point out even farther, there is a shin swivel below the knee. The knee, once again, fantastically done ratchet joint, which can also bend forward in strange yoga sort of ways. But again, here's the problem. That's fantastic. If only there were two of them so that he could bend his knee farther than 90 degrees. Again, I might be asking for a bit much, but I was hoping that would be double jointed. On the bright side, his foot does have a really nicely done ankle tilt, and check this out, you can slide this along the transformation joint and then tilt it even farther. So he can get really wide-legged stances going on, which is fantastic. This guy's posability is pretty good, but for some reason I have trouble letting it go that he cannot double joint his knees and elbows. I guess I'm just racist in that way. But other than the shortcomings of his elbows and knees, and when I say shortcomings, you know, this thing is... Oh! It's still really nicely ratcheted and gorgeous and chunky. His posability's okay. Unfortunately, though, that's really about it. It's just okay. Gets everything done that it needs to get done, but doesn't really do anything to wow ya. Speaking of wow, he can also totally hold little rubber teenage boys. And try to eat them. I don't know, or stick them inside his chest. Get in there. Adding a semblance of scale is a tiny little Spike Witwicky figure. His sculpt and paint apps are dead simple and a little mushy. He's posable at the shoulders, hips, and knees, which isn't that bad for a guy that's smaller than a Human Alliance flesh buddy. He can also ride inside of Prime's truck mode, though he needs to be loaded through one of the front windshields. Not the smoothest way in, but I guess those were the wild 80s. MP-10 is a very solid transformer. His vehicle mode is excellent, his transformation is a fun balance of complexity and intuitive action, and the robot mode hits many of its basic marks. There are definite downsides that stick out to me at the end of the day, though. His energy axe, and lack of double jointing in either his elbows or his knees being lasting sore points. But don't get me wrong, if this ever gets a North American release for one of the usual US Masterpiece price points, it is entirely worth considering. That said, it cost a lot more than that in Japan. And to decide on its worth at that dollar amount, we'll need to take a look at what else you get in the box. For now, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I will be back soon, plastic pals. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful in providing some information about the second Masterpiece Optimus Prime design of this century.